Simon, Nottingham Forest, back in the big time, and of course, they are welcome back because a club with great history and tradition, but they've been finding life tough since they got back in the top flight. 20-plus signings. Who made the signings? Were they on the recommendation of the owner, Evangelos Marinakis? Did Steve Cooper really want them? Etc., etc., etc. And now we know that Nottingham Forest head of recruitment and head scout, it's being reported, have indeed left the club. Whether sacked, whether invited politely to go, whatever the circumstances were. It's understood the head of recruitment, George Sirianos, and head scout Andy Scott were relieved of their duties on Tuesday as a new fella came in, the new sporting director, Filippo Giraldi. What does this tell us, do you think? Does it prove that the 22 signings did not have the fingerprints of Cooper on them?
Well, it tells the 22 players potentially that have been signed that the people that signed them have made a mistake, so I'm not sure it gives them the feeling of. Look, they've gone and got a guy called Filippo Giraldi who worked with Watford.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what that tells you, because obviously he'd have been part of the changing curve of managers at Watford and so on and so forth. So I'm not entirely sure that should give Steve Cooper any feelings of gratification and security. But it tells you that they want to change of direction. Now, he may have been brought in the door. They may have looked at the sporting director requirements. They may have wanted a more expansive role with a more seasoned and Premier League experienced sporting director, who then said, I want my own team. So I'm going to bring my own team in. And I don't need these guys. I've got my own team, like football managers do. This is the way it happens sometimes.
Yeah.
So, you've gone in there, you spent £150 million of your own money in cold blood, or broadcaster money coupled with yours, and you're looking at the landscape thinking, OK, we might need to do better, we might need to evolve better, we might need a sporting director that's more rounded. It may be nothing more sinister than that. It may well be because the owner looks at it and thinks that we've bought a bunch of pups and you've been responsible for it, and Steve Cooper's taking the downside of that. It may be a variety of things. And we can extrapolate it up to saying, this proves that Cooper had nothing to do with the signings.
Oh, yeah, but that's what it looks like.
Well, I don't think that he would have had anything to do with physically putting a player's pen to paper or negotiating the player's contracts and wages. But I would be amazed beyond gobsmacked if he wasn't involved in the process where here is a list of players that we can get, right? What do you think? Well, I would prefer to have him, but if I can't have him, I'll have him. Those conversations are fluid. If the idea is that basically Steve Cooper was on a little island over here that no one goes to visit him on, and all of a sudden along comes this deluge of players that subsequently visit him that he doesn't even know their names, never even heard of them, I think that's fanciful. I think there will be... Now, are we to advocate for the fact that Steve Cooper gave a list of people that he wanted, and on that list, none of them were delivered to him by the club, and that ultimately the ones that he's been given are completely polar opposite to what he wants?
Well, as you know,
I don't agree with that.
A whole bunch of people have been second-guessing it for us, not least our Monday partner, Graham Souness, who said, I wouldn't be surprised if Cooper only wanted about 5 or 6 of these 22.
Yeah, but Graham's a salty ex-manager that sits there thinking that ultimately every time an owner does something good, that's a result of a manager's achievements, and every time an owner does something bad, he's on his own for that. And with that in mind, there's a balance between what a manager should be getting, what he's entitled to be getting, what looks like support, and then this other sort of area that gets touched like a Bermuda Triangle, where ultimately there's always a reason why a manager isn't being successful. I would advocate, because there used to be the thing about Liverpool, Brendan Rodgers didn't sign the players. No, because it's a matter of fact, he didn't sign the players. Someone else signed the players, but he would have been involved in the process, in the discussion, and it might not have been on top of his list of player that he's got, but there's no way, unless you've got a complete and utter loon as an owner that cannot wait to shed 150 million quid out of his pocket so everyone can look at the fact he spent it, that a manager wouldn't have been in the equation. And if we're so desperate to find out whether these are Steve Cooper's players or not, why doesn't someone bleed and we'll ask him?
Oh, that's probably a good idea. Next chance we get, we'll do that.
Ask Steve Cooper,
do that.
This allegation that none of these players have been signed and you were completely out of the loop, is there any truth in that? And then when he gives an answer saying no, they'll say, but he's got to say that, hasn't he? Because otherwise he'll be being deceitful to his owner. So we won't be able to win that argument and square that circle.
Yeah.
We want the down the rabbit hole stuff.
Somebody close to Steve Cooper is getting in touch, because everybody listens to this show, it would seem, and everybody wants to comment on it. I'm not going to give you the name, but the name is known. Confidentially, pretty few of them were his signings.
But what does his signings mean? What does it mean when you say his
recommendation?
Signings?
To me, it boils down to this. Listen, it's simple. It's not rocket science.
Have you seen the size of Forest's squad?
I want X, Y, and Z. would equal Steve Cooper's preferred signings.
And if Steve Cooper had an expansive list via Steve Cooper's recruitment network, which gave them 20 players that they needed. Have you seen the size of their squad, by the way? Because there is an argument to say it's ridiculous. Because Palace have got a playing squad of about 30, and they're an established Premier League club, and Nottingham Forest seem to have a playing squad numbers up to 46 players. So it does seem a bit ridiculous. But by the same token, this argument about who's somebody's player. Unless if Steve Cooper can say to the media, I went into my owner and I gave him a list of 20 players and he said, do one, here's the list I want to give you, then I don't understand what the conversation is about.
Oh, yeah, but how's that going to leave him with the likes of Marinakis? With all due respect, thanks for your list, but do one. I can imagine that. I've got my own players.
But if Steve Cooper walks in there with a list, right, guess what he'd have done? Everyone else's job, and they'd be running off trying to sign these players. If he gives him a list of, I want Neymar, and I want this, and I want that. I'm taking it to the ridiculous. You just don't
like managers who make recommendations, who speak out.
I don't like ridiculous, stupid media that don't know the questions that they're asking. Right, that's what I don't like, and I don't like narratives being built up without any substance behind it. And I like to push back and question those narratives and see if the people that are answering the questions actually know what the answer looks like when it comes back.
So you're going to tell Souness on Monday, listen, you made that comment you made about 5 or 6 signings.
Yes, I do.
I'd be delighted to tell him. Balderdash,
I told him on Monday, and I'll tell him again. I'll keep
on rip his studs down your shin pad.
And what I'll do is I'll write it down for him so he can read it in his spare time and keep reminding himself of it.
Yeah. How many do you think Cooper wanted? There's a phrase. How many did he really want?
Let me rephrase that question. Let me repackage it. How many of them that were put in front of him did he really not want?
Well, I think a substantial number.
How do you know?
I wouldn't have, because I've just received a message from someone who's close to him.
Oh, please.
Well, yesterday you were keeping your contacts to yourself when you pretended you had a bit of information that was coming in your phone. I looked at it. You're trying to buy theatre tickets.
Because I'm taking your errant profession to task, you get all bristly, right? The point is if you can ask a question, you've got to be able to understand the answer. How many of those players that were signed, I'm not defending the owner, by the way, because he's done a good thing by giving him a new contract, but if he has indeed gone out and forced players upon Steve Cooper with no validity or any buy-in from the manager, then he's going to cop it. But how many of those players that were recommended to the club that were then subsequently introduced to the manager, did the manager say, not on my watch?
Yeah.
None, I bet.
We'll find out in the course of time, because we'll try and get to
butter mountain, more players.
You have confessed
look at that poor manager. He's got too many players. I've never heard anybody say, I've got too many players. I've never heard a manager in my life say, I want less players. I'll tell you what you can do for me, Chairman. Get me less players.
Get me good players, the ones I want.
That's a different discussion.
Yeah. Not the ones you were recommending when you were at Crystal Palace.
That's supposition on behalf of a ghastly, ill-informed journalist.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.